That's the trouble. I can't make up my mind. I haven't got a brain.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday of my Social 330 final. It's raining outside. It's actually a storm. Probably because I'm having a brainstorm. I wanted to talk to you guys about this social stratification that I'm learning about. It sounds pretty boring, and if you're not into this, I'm going to warn you that this vlog is going to be pretty boring, but I need to talk about it out loud with somebody. And so here we go. This guy Alan, or Mr. Johnson, well, it's Alan Johnson, you can call him whatever you want. He starts off the first chapter with talking about Rodney King. Can't we all just get along? He talks about the reason why we see differences in our culture. We as humans make them significant. Once a human gives something a name, whether it's skin color, disabilities, whatever, that name gets a significance. It turns into this whole social process, and then it just manifests into this huge ordeal, and then we get all these problems with oppression and discrimination. When we're talking about privilege and power in regards to this, we can observe that dominant groups such as white people, straight people, non-disabled people, they pretty much ignore these inconsistencies that we're seeing. They get these privileges that come with it, and they just kind of don't realize that other people suffer from that. So that's what we're talking about here in chapter 1. Say that you are a black woman in Africa. If you haven't experienced racism, then you don't consider yourself a black woman. You're a woman, you're abled, but you don't go around saying, oh, I'm a black woman. You're a woman. Okay, but then when you come to America, we have all these issues with race and everything, and then as soon as she gets here, she's a black woman. And with the title of black woman, you get all these stereotypes. So then just based on her appearance, people start labeling her with the preconceived notions that they have about black people or black women. We have that social category in America, but she didn't have it in Africa. If I was in a room of all white people, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm the white girl, because there'd probably be other white girls there. But say I walked into a room that that's inhabited by all black people, then I would be the white girl for show. He talks about these two different types of privilege that this lady told him about. What's her name? She talks about these privileges that we have. And there are two different types. The first type is the unearned types. I guess you could call them rights or even luxuries. And that's just these things that people should have, such as feeling safe in public spaces, getting hired for a job without your sexual identity being questioned, When these entitlements are restricted to certain groups, it becomes a form of privilege that's called unearned advantage. Oh, here we go. It says right here. Unearned advantage gives dominant groups a competitive edge that they are reluctant to even acknowledge, much less give up. Also, in this first chapter, we talk about this paradox, okay? This paradox is that even though these privileges are allotted to individuals, it doesn't have to do with the individuals. It has to do with the system in which they're living, you don't get this privilege because you say you want it. You get it because other people give it to you, all right? Okay, so you can have these privileges and not even realize it because other people are giving them to you. I'm white. When I go into a store, I don't get followed around like I'm about to steal stuff, but I know black girls that told me that they have, and that's fucked up. Okay, I didn't even realize that I had that privilege. I didn't even realize that I wasn't getting messed with in the store, but they did, okay? So it's the people that worked in the store gave me that privilege of not getting harassed. On the flip side of that, people not realizing their oppression, okay? It's the same thing. The only way you can be oppressed is if other people are doing it to you. Even though you're an individual and these experiences are happening to you as an individual, it's because of the system and because of other people. So for example, before I took this class, I never felt oppressed as a woman. I know women are oppressed, but like I didn't really ever have a problem with it. I really like this quote that the author has in here. He says that it's like living in a rainy climate and somehow avoiding being rained on yourself. It's still a rainy place to be, and getting wet is something that most people have to deal with. So what he's saying is that even if you don't realize your privilege, or if you don't realize the oppressions that exist, like, they're still there. So that kind of takes us to chapter 2, and we kind of talk about capitalism, or talk about capitalism a little bit and its role in the development of these social stratifications that we're seeing. Well, let's talk about capitalism first. The way the author puts it in this book is that capitalism is when people invest money to, what does it say, to buy what it takes to produce goods and services and end up with more money than they started with. Okay, so this allows like this small elite of like rich people to control the vast majority of like wealth and income, and then that just leaves this like small share to be divided among like all the workers and stuff. Let's define white supremacy. It's the belief and promotion of the belief that white people are superior to people of other racial backgrounds. In this book, he's trying to tell us that whites developed the idea of whiteness to define like this privileged social category above everyone else that wasn't included in it. If whiteness is what it means to be human, then it wasn't really a offense against the Constitution to like dominate and to like oppress people who weren't white. It turned into this entire campaign to like encourage the white workers to adopt their whiteness as a part of their social identity. It says here that they oppress the blacks and the other racial minorities to encourage them to work for wages that were lower than what most of the white people will accept. Okay, this is an awesome strategy. Thank you, old school capitalists. The white people, even though they're not getting paid a lot, they know they're getting paid more than the minorities. So they're like, all right, I'm straight with that. And they're not going to quit, and they're not going to do a bad job because they know that the capitalists can hire the minorities for like, for cheaper wages. So this number one, kept wages down, and it kept productivity up. So that's pretty much where our like white supremacy comes from. So that's a big part of it all, the capitalism back in the old days. So we talk about this matrix of domination and the paradox of being privileged and underprivileged at the same time. So the big thing to realize here is that there's more than one set of categories. You have gender, your abilities, sexual identity, whatever. Okay, so it's like you can be privileged in one of these categories, but in other categories, you could have the disadvantage. Like, sure, you might be a white male, but if you're in a wheelchair, that you get oppressed in that category. People get really upset about this shit because they like think that these privileges and these oppressions have to do with just them as individuals. Well, that's not true, because like we said earlier, we're all part of this huge system. I'm lower class. Alright, sure, you're oppressed there, but you're white, so you have a better chance of getting a job, and you're male, so you have a better chance of getting a job, so shut up. So he brings up this concept, like talking about like costs and benefits that are associated with these social categories. Okay, it's like, alright, like I just said, like if you're male, that's like +1, but if you're working class, it's like -1. Okay, but you can't think about it like that. It's just like all these privileges are part of this matrix that we're talking about, and you can't just like be one or the other. You're part of this system. In chapters 6 and 7, our author talks about what all these systems and what all these social categories have to do with us. As we said earlier, like our social life only happens as the individuals participate in the social systems. So like we said earlier, it's a system made up of individuals, and you can't really understand the system by looking at individuals alone. Let's talk about the ways we're shaped as individuals. Okay, the first way is socialization. Alright, ever since we're babies, we get all these ideas from our parents, from the media, from our teachers, and they're just giving us like these images of the world and who we are in relation to the system and to other people.